Hey everybody, it's Jay, and tonight I wanted to talk about this Ronin Katana Euro number 8 sword. This is a reproduction of a Viking era sword. Probably pretty obvious. Looks a lot like a Viking sword, doesn't it? And I don't remember the typology exactly. I'll put it in the notes at the bottom of the video. I'm not a historian. I'm definitely not a sword expert, so if I get some of those facts wrong, do ask that you bear with me a little bit about it. And I'll mostly just be sticking to my experience with the sword so far. Ronin Katana is based in China, and they originally seem to have pretty well been focused on Asian style swords, hence the name, but over the years have made some pretty decent inroads into really affordable, but generally pretty well regarded in terms of quality, European reproductions as well. So what do we have? We have a 1075 high carbon steel blade on a peened pommel with no perceptible rattle whatsoever. A decent amount of flex in the blade, but it's not overly bendy at all. We have a grip length of 4¼ inches, which is not too bad for this type of sword. You're going to have to go with a hammer. It forces a hammer grip for sure. The point of balance that's pretty far up the blade, which to be honest is actually pretty typical of Viking style swords. They have pretty generous blades, pretty thick, pretty hefty blades. An overall blade length of 29½ inches and an overall length of just under 36 inches. The advertised weight is 2 pounds, 8 ounces, which seems pretty hefty for a one-handed blade. That is actually pretty typical from what I understand. These tended to be pretty stout swords. So, my overall impressions of this. First off, this diamond cross section here, you can see very generous, very long central fuller, and this very gradual, continuous grind from the fuller to the edge. Quite honestly, this is probably one of the best blade geometry, out-of-the-box blade geometries that I've seen, that I have, of any of the swords that I have, which is really impressive considering that this sword goes for under $300. I believe they're around $280 typically. I think my wife said she bought it for me for a Christmas present. I think she said she paid around $250 for it on sale. That's really an exceptional price to quality ratio in my opinion, especially considering the fact that, again, we have no really perceptible rattle in the blade at all. The guard could be fitted a little more closely to the blade. You can see we have a pretty considerable gap here. Not that big of a deal, pretty typical in a cheap sword. I really only have 2 criticisms that I noticed that I'd point out. One is purely cosmetic. We have some exposed glue and wood here where the leather wrapping is just not quite fitted quite right. Which again, it's a cosmetic issue. It's a cheap sword. It's a relatively very cheap sword. So not that big of a deal. The other issue that I ran into when I first got this was I found the edge to be pretty dull out of the box. I had difficulty cutting with it, so I ended up sharpening the edge, which you can probably see a little bit. You might be able to pick up the line where I used a work sharp to put a better edge on it. But once I did that, and once I got around having to use a hammer grip, which is not something that I'm used to doing, I'm used to using that handshake grip. Once I figured out how to use that, cutting with it is very easy. With this very hefty, pretty chunky blade, chopping is really easy to do, but it really did need to have a sharpened edge to work. So my overall opinion of this is very strong. For under $300, this seems to be, to me, right out of the box, at least this example that I have, to be a pretty decent Viking sword. And if you're interested in getting a Viking era sword, I would say definitely check this out if you don't want to spend Albion money for an Albion. Of course, if you do want to spend Albion money, by all means, spend Albion money, because from all accounts, they're very nice swords. But for under $300, like I said, I think my wife says she paid around $250 for it, and it was a gift, Christmas gift, which I'm very, very grateful for. I don't think you can go wrong with it, really. And I'm interested in checking out some other Ronin Katana European models. They have some other ones that I'm interested in that I'd like to get my hands on. So I'll have a Euro number 3 coming in, which is an Oakshot Type 18C. Also, one other note, because not all swords come with these, we have a wood core scabbard that is leather wrapped with a steel collar and chape here, as well as mountings for a belt. Really a good value again for under 300 bucks, especially if you don't mind putting a little bit better edge on it from the factory. So this is Jay. Hope you liked the video. Please click like if you did. Be sure to check out our backlog if you haven't, and subscribe to us. And be sure to check out the link to our Patreon page if you want to help support us. And we'll see you again soon next time.